Hi, this is Rany Randall of No Age and host of the podcast Hyphenate with Rany Randall. I want to welcome our newest sponsor of the show, DistroKid. DistroKid helps musicians get their music on all the major streaming platforms, and artists keep 100% of their royalties. Hyphenate listeners get 30% off at distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate. Again, that's distrokid.com/VIP/HYPHENATE. Go get your music streaming everywhere now. What's happening? This is Monday, June 17th. Summer is upon us. Mr. Aaron Farley, how are you doing? We are here today to discuss Mr. Kip Uhlhorn of the Red Scare, Cloudline Canyons, Panthers, et al. What's going on?
Yeah. I'm doing good.
You just froze.
This was a great one. This brought me back. Uh-oh. I think that now we're having internet problems on the...
You froze.
Yeah, now we're having internet problems on the halftime as well.
The internet problem episode. God damn. We got ghosts in the machine.
I think, you know what, if we want to bring back our conspiracies and those kind of things.
Yes.
That there's supposedly really big like sunspot activities happening right now. Have you heard this?
I've heard this, yes.
Yeah. And it was actually started last month or something.
Mm-hmm.
And you always think like, oh, this is bullshit kind of. And then they're like, no, here's how it works. Like it's huge bands of radiation hitting and then it hits the satellites and it just makes things like any kind of satellites or any kind of electronic devices can just like throw everything out of whack a little bit.
Yeah. I believe it.
I believe it too. This last month, in all intents and purposes has been wacky.
Oh my God. Yeah. I follow Zvex, the pedal company. They make the Fuzz Factory, the Box of Rock, all these great pedals. The owner creator, Zach, I believe, of Zvex. He has a great kind of like scientific sort of thread that he always goes down. I think he appears to be a fairly intelligent person in the electrical field. No pun intended, but he always has the like the latest things on like, what the sun's doing, what it's throwing off, and what possible links to things that could be happening. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah, he's pretty awesome. But yeah, I think there's something going on. But yeah, I don't know how did the episode sound? Was it bad? Again, I can't always tell because I'm in it and I remember the thing going. Were you able to follow Kip's story, or did it get choppy? It was fine.
No.
Okay. I edited it out a lot. So now we just I think you muted yourself. Hold on. Now you're gone. Oh God. You're muted. Can you unmute yourself, Aaron?
Oh my God. Yes. Sorry, my microphone is changing back and forth right now.
Oh, it's so fun.
Okay. All right, now I'm back. I'm back.
Okay. I've considered upgrading to like a fiber thing. I know they have fiber in our fiber optics in our area now, but I can't tell. I don't know if it's me or if it's everybody else or if it's just the sun. The world.
It could be the sun. It could be the fact that my microphone, like my, I go through one of those little Scarlett USB things.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't on, and then it just popped on. So now I should be good. I'm good from now on. But I was actually just doing that on purpose to just bring the whole episode into 360 for you.
Alignment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Into alignment. No, it totally made sense. I think that, it was awesome. And then I was like, God, Panthers. And then I went and listened to that record and I'm like, oh yeah, of course. This record is amazing.
Of course. It was huge. It. Yeah. They were great.
Especially at that time. I mean, like that's the sound of all of those, the bands that were like, oh yeah, we want to sound like Hot Snakes and Jesus Lizard and
like MC5 or something. I always thought about at the time,
But I mean, but it was just like time signatures and a lot of weird changes and almost yelling, but not quite yelling, but
Mm-hmm.
still catchy.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's always what we were trying to do too. I listened to that and I was like, oh yeah, okay. I know I can feel all the influences here.
Yeah, well, the one dude's band, Turing Machine, like Alan
Yeah.
Turing, they were incredible. They were like a super kind of tight math rock band, a la Don
Yep.
Caballero, Tortoisey sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
No, it was awesome. And it was awesome to I mean, I have to look up a picture of Kip because I have a feeling that we probably were in a lot of the same places as you guys were.
Yeah, exactly. He looks exactly like that guy. Let me see if
Yeah.
I can. Yeah, exactly. No, Kip it's a funny one too because I remember all the years you definitely meet people and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, we played with you,
Yeah.
and oh wow, the Hyphenate YouTube episode comes up early on as one of the main
Oh
images and
wow.
do an image search. Or maybe it's just are these things like localized? Like if you look for something or if you post something, will it come up fast in your SEO?
You are asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway,
I
but yeah,
I would
he's great.
imagine there's some kind of satanic curse that is the overall. So whatever you think is happening, it's twice as bad as you think.
That is exactly right. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, no, Kip's fantastic. It was one of those things too. It was like, oh yeah, you guys got to, like, the Red Scare's being reissued, like all this stuff. I was like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. God, but it definitely it just took me, it took me a minute. I was like, oh my God, yes. Remember all of these things, all these times. And even I think it comes across in the episode as well of that kind of thing of like, right. Like we totally hung out. We totally had beers,
Early 2000s.
in the
Yeah.
early 2000s. And it was great.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think,
totally.
something about that time too. It's just like, oh yeah, going to a lot of shows, drinking too many beers, and hanging
Totally.
out too late.
Well, and just showing up at places and it would be like, hey, we're going to see a show at the Elliott Smith Wall.
Yes.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh my God, what was his name? Who had the studio there?
Manny? No.
No,
Oh, the studio there. Oh,
Elliott
no.
Smith Wall.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't remember his name. I'm blanking. But then there were always all these places that someone would open up a studio, or it was cheap enough to rent like a big open box with no windows, and then you'd have shows there until it got shut down by the cops enough times to where you couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas Brian's warehouse downtown, all
Totally.
of a sudden, like you have a friend that has a 4,000 square foot warehouse downtown, and they're like, "Yeah, I just live here, and then 3 other people live here, but I'm also doing art shows, and we're also gonna have a music venue, and there's no rules because it's on Santa Fe, and nobody is down here at night, and so have fun."
Yeah, well,
hopefully your car doesn't get broken into, and it's like 2 mile, or it's like half a mile from 6th Street Warehouse where you and Shannon met.
Yeah,
and and everyone played on a half pipe, and yeah, it's just like one of those. It's like those 5 years were crazy.
Oh man, it was a funny one, and obviously, there's a bit of nostalgia for this kind of stuff, looking backwards, but it sounds hard to believe now, but rent was relatively inexpensive in LA, especially downtown LA. And that was a big thing. I remember those early sort of days of, being in my early 20s and getting to travel a little bit and tour, just a small amount, or going to New York, and you'd hear all the stories like, wow, everybody's so cool, everything's so hip here, but they're paying like $1,000 a month for like a crappy studio or something. Like, what? That's insane. Like we have a 1 bedroom with 6 guys in it for $200, it's just, or whatever. Like, we're splitting, everyone has to come up with like $40 and then we're fine for rent. It was just, that's what was really fun, I think, in that like those early days. And I think everybody wanted to hate on LA. Like, oh, why do you live in LA? LA sucks. And it's like, yeah, but it's really affordable. Like, and you can really like get around and make stuff, and like gear was like cheap, and people would just like leave drum kits on the sidewalk. Like Dean had a drum kit he found in a dumpster, or like you'd find amps on the road or whatever. There was something about those early aughts that at least, maybe it was our own rose-colored glasses of just being kids and having nothing to do and no money, but it sort of worked, I mean, that I don't know if it's necessarily the same.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit. I mean, all the everybody that lived at the death camp house. I mean, what there were like it was like a 4-bedroom and like 10 people lived there. It was a constant revolving door of like punks and artists and musicians.
And the rent was probably $600.
Oh yeah,
Less
maybe.
than
And
that,
it was
too.
in the fancy Atwater, and
Right,
it was
yeah.
like, yeah. And I mean, I think we um, when I lived in, let's see, what was it? We lived in Silver Lake, and there were 3 of us in a 2-bedroom, and I think we paid $320 a piece.
Yeah, very
And
doable.
it was like, yeah, it was like 900. I think our rent was $900 for the whole house.
That was fancy.
And it was, you know, I mean, whatever. That was 2001. So Jesus, we're talking about 23 years ago.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, there's inflation and all that sort of stuff. But in general, I remember just for being a weird broke punk kid, it was like, yeah, LA sort of worked for us at that time. And
Yeah,
like you say, just like you could find a warehouse and like throw 1 or 2 parties and you'd make enough money for the rent for the thing. You know what I mean? So nobody even really had to pay rent as long as you were down to have like 200 people show up a few times a month, and you know your place smelled like beer all the time.
Yeah, you really had to. You had to make about $600 or $700 a month to live comfortably as a 20-year-old, as like a 23-year-old with maybe you had a crappy car.
Oh, of course.
And then,
but again, LA was full of those. There was full of crappy cars. If your car breaks down, you get another one. You get, you can spend. Yeah. I had that thing. For a used car, you get a year for every $1,000 you spend. If you buy a car for like $1,000, it'll last you maybe a year.
Oh well, I bought my car from Sippy for $500.
Oh my god!
And it was like what was it? A
old Honda CRV?
No, it was a Honda. No, it was a. Yeah, it was a Honda Civic, but then the driver's side door had been smashed, so you couldn't get in the driver's side door, so you had to get in the passenger side.
Yes,
but it drove great, and then I think he was able to totaled it. I don't remember.
Yeah,
for his insurance or whatever, and so I bought it for like $500, and I think I had it for 6 months probably.
There you go.
But it was good. And it was like insurance was whatever the cheapest you could get.
Oh man.
So yeah, it was almost uninsurable anyway. So I only had to get insurance just in case I hit somebody else. Yeah. I think I probably had to make like $750 or $800 a month. And I was living large. We just walked down to the bar 3 times a week.
You always had your shit together. That sounds like somebody who knows what they're doing. In my mind,
I mean, I always had car insurance. That was the one thing. I've never not had car insurance.
And you always had a car. Again, another thing. It was kind of a necessity in LA. Or that last year of college for me, my car was just I couldn't keep it working. It just wasn't working, and I couldn't afford to keep it working. And I think I ended up I finally fixed something in it and then just sold it. And I was like, okay, I just would rather have that. And then I rode my bike everywhere. And I became
really?
Because I was in a band with some people who were on their bikes all the time. So it was I was like, I'd show up places in cars and kind of like, whoa, bro, why are you driving here? It was a very kind of. But so then I just had my same crappy road bike from high school, and then went to the bike kitchen and got a flip flop, single speed hub on it. So it was just like a giant BMX bike.
Yeah.
And because it was the style at the time, tied an onion to my belt, which was the style at the time. Everybody had to have one gear on a large, old road bike.
Yep.
And it was great. I lost 50 pounds in the first 2 months, and just had a great time.
Well, and you guys were kind of central, right? Like you were living right.
Well, we're Melrose
in West Hollywood, kind of.
Yeah, but I was going to school downtown at USC.
Oh wow!
And then so I had to do that, 5 days a week. And then after being downtown at school, then I'd ride up to 7th and Fig and meet those guys when they were done doing their bicycle jobs, and then we'd bike over to downtown rehearsals and practice for 3 hours, and then ride from downtown back to West Hollywood.
Crazy. When you just had hours to ride your bike around.
Yeah. And then I would drink a 6-pack somewhere on that ride home, throw it in the bike messenger bag and just pounding beers on the way back. Just
I mean, you need to get your calories up.
Yeah, I got to get something in there.
We got to. I mean, it wasn't just for the feeling. It was it's health as well.
I remember the freedom though, of realizing like, oh, I can't get pulled over. Like I can't get a DUI if I'm riding my bike. Like this is awesome. Which I think is not true. I think you can get pulled over still.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah. But at the time, it felt true. I felt very emboldened in my excessive drinking while riding a bike.
Well, I mean, you never got
in the dark with no lights and no helmet on in the middle of the night in Hollywood. It sounded like the safest thing to do.
You obviously could drunkenly ride a bike well, so as to not get in trouble.
Yes, that's true.
You proved your own point.
Until the broken neck and brain surgery would prove otherwise. Although I was not drunk at that time, but I was definitely excessively riding my bike. I rolled the dice one too many times. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah, I mean that's not. And you weren't wearing a helmet, right?
No.
Yeah. I have another friend who got hit by a car, and also she lost her sense of smell.
Oh. That's not that bad.
She hit her head.
All the things to lose.
I mean, I think that there were some other things, but that was the main, I can't smell anything. It's like, because I hit my head so hard. Oh, it's horrible. Anyway, that being said, let's not talk about bike injuries anymore. Wear a helmet, kids.
Always wear helmets. Yeah. Well, the best part of that, I guess, if you really want to drill the wear a helmet idea down, but the way they explained it to me after I was conscious several days later was that, with a helmet, your head can slide, because you're going in inertia, right? Forward momentum, you're going forward. Right. And if you land on your head from falling, your head will slide, you will continue the forward motion. Without a helmet, your head is like a piece of Velcro that adheres to the asphalt, and the rest of your body will continue moving forward, and then your head will stick to the ground, causing torque and excessive force on the neck.
Wow!
Because now your head is sticking to the ground, and then the rest of your body spins around and flips and falls down while your head is still being impacted into the asphalt. So therefore, neck breaking is a huge thing that can happen without a helmet. So what I mean, not just the impact on the hematoma or the concussion that you're going to get into the brain of the gray matter, but you're going to just wrench. Envision this in your mind like a some kind of rag doll, but then as soon as the head hits the ground, grab the head and then the rest of the body keeps moving forward. And then the head's stuck to it. So that's if nothing else, right, just the idea of then hitting your head and skidding forward while your body continues to skid. So
you're saying we should have little tiny wheels on our helmets as well to keep our heads really rolling.
Yeah.
As we just keep rolling. Maybe we should ride
cover your body in wheels.
Just wheels. And then we just skate down the road on our bodies. That's a good idea.
The likelihood of neck breaks would be greatly reduced.
I mean, last year was the first year that I wore a helmet snowboarding. So I snowboarded for 30 some years and never worn a helmet. And I hit my head so hard on the ice and just super unexpected. It was at night, and so it was under the lights, and I just completely caught my back edge and went down and hit the back of my head, and I didn't pass out, but I hit my head so hard that when I finally sat up, I was dizzy, and I saw everything in negative. Whoa. Black and white negative.
Well,
and I was sitting there going, wow, it's not great.
No.
And thank
God you had that helmet on.
I don't know. Honestly, I think it would have been, I don't want to say I wouldn't be here, but I definitely would be a bit dumber because it was the hardest I've ever hit my head in my life.
Are you sure? Is that possible? To be
maybe
be dumber?
Not, maybe not. I would be the same. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about senses of smell and depending on where the brain trauma is or where the brain injury is, your visual cortex is in the back of your head. So the fact that you went down on the back of it, that's the area where most visual processing is done. So any impact to the back of your skull is most likely going to impact your vision in one way or another. So seeing it in negative would totally correlate to the same idea.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I sat up and was just like,
Ooh.
wow, this is crazy. Am I like everything is backward or like is this happening? Am I here? This is so weird. Yeah. Yeah,
Gnarly,
a
man.
rough one.
Gnarly.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of helmets.
Yep.
I'd be wearing a helmet now podcasting. I think that's the level of, with my luck, the amount of lives I have on my, if a cat has 9 lives, the amount of lives I have left is getting pretty low digits.
Yeah,
So,
me too.
anything I have.
I've officially used 4.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
I've had
man.
4 close calls.
Yeah. That's part of the fun of it. Okay, so cheap rent, bad cars. Oh, I was going to say. Oh, the thing I was going to. I put a note here. Sorry, there's a tab left open with the bad cars or shitty cars. I had a car that someone had tried to break into with like a screwdriver on the driver's side, so the driver's side door couldn't open from the outside. So what ended up happening is I became very chivalrous. I would take my now wife, and when we were just dating then, I would always open her door first on the passenger side and let her in first, and then ask her, like, can you reach over and open my door? Because I can't get in from that side.
I thought you were going to say then you'd climb over her.
That's what. Yeah. Well, normally that's what I would do if there was nobody else there. I'd have to climb in from that side. But on the off chance that I was lucky enough to have a passenger in my car, I would open the door for them and then ask them to lean over and open it for me, so I could come back around. But it got me in the habit of always opening the passenger side door, which I think I still to this day, after having a car that couldn't open from that side. But that's amazing. I think I don't know. I'm assuming life is the same for everybody and for kids and for other cities and stuff. But I just think the culture of having crappy cars or cars that got broken into or hit or something, and then you just kind of live with them for so long. That was a big part of that same sort of, like, you have like 2 or 3 roommates. Everyone's car is in half working order at all times. Tires are bald, or most, 1 or 2 at least on each side. And I remember I loved when I discovered the used tire shops where you could get another half used tire for $20.
Yeah. You just buy one tire at a time.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Oh my god! And you're like, why is my alignment? I have to like pull my steering wheel one way.
I know.
They're like a quote unquote a retread, and I'm like, what is a retread? I don't even know what that means.
This is when they
don't even worry about it.
They cut more treads into the rubber that's left.
I know. It's so
brilliant.
Good.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it worked. It worked fine. So
sure.
What? I had a couple of weird tires on there.
I mean, why were you going to put new tires? Like, the price of new tires would be worth more than the car is worth.
Yeah, I remember. I remember being able to buy new tires for the first time, like 4 real ones.
Oh, it's huge!
And just going, I have made it. I've made it in this world. I can buy new tires for a car. I have a car that's worth putting new tires on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was just going to say my first car was like a Subaru something. It was like a 1981 Subaru something.
Nice.
Little 4-door. But the bolts for on the driver's side car, like the driver's side chair, whatever driver's side seat, were rusted out. Like the 2 back bolts were like rusted out
in your chair when you drove.
Yeah, so I had a apple crate underneath, like pushed underneath the seat, and it was tied down with the bungee cord to the floorboards.
Amazing.
And I was like, well, you just need it to not fall back, right? So
yeah.
Years later, when I went to sell that car, and my dad, I had moved home right after school to work, and my dad's like, okay, you should upgrade your car. Let's figure this out. We should sell this thing. And then he looks, he's like, is that an apple crate? You have an apple crate under your driver's seat? And I'm like, well, yeah, I didn't want it to fall back. He's like, we can't sell this car.
You shouldn't even be driving this car.
Yeah, he's like, you've been driving this car? I'm like, yeah, for like 3 years.
On icy roads daily.
Oh my god, the worst icy roads. Like, we got caught out like driving to Blue Ridge, which was this mountain that was by Pullman. We go snowboarding, and then on the way home, it was like going over the pass. it was stalling out, so we'd have to go and crank up the what is it when you crank up the amount of gas that goes into the
Oh God,
what would
yeah.
that be? The alternator? I don't know what that
No,
would be. Anyway,
no.
opening it up so it's like
Yeah,
just
fuel
so we could
injection or
get home.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fuel injection. I don't even
I don't
know.
know.
I don't. My friend Dan, he's like, well, this is how you do it, and he was like, unscrewing this screw so more gas was going in, and it's like, I don't know, 9 o'clock at night, 5 degrees. There's no heat in the car, so we all have all of our snowboard gear on, and we're driving, and the car's backfiring, and our friends are behind us, and they're like, what has happened? There's like fire coming out of the back of your car. We're like, it's fine, we'll make it. And we like come over, and then the car gives out right before Pullman, and we coast into town.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that happened more than once.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're like, wow, we made it. All we had to do is make it home. I mean, none of us, we didn't have AAA. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that stuff. Like, what would we have done? I don't know. We made it. We figured it out. So, but it was so cold in the car that the orange, I just remember we were taking stuff out of the car and the orange juice was on the floor, and we picked it up and it was frozen.
Oh God.
Good times.
Amazing. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
All right. So getting back to, so Kip comes from Knoxville, Tennessee, the Red Scare early band. And Brian Rodinger put out some of the earliest stuff that they did. And it's cool. It's all being reissued. It's all out there now. If you're curious and you're excited, you're into, late 90s, early aughts, sort of hardcore revivals. I don't know. Is it I feel like it's a thing now. I feel like younger kids, I think it's like we've come around, in that 20-year sort of cycle of stuff. Yeah.
And I know. Olive
she
agrees.
loves it too. Yes.
Yeah. She's like, they're yelling all the time. Just like this.
More blast beats.
Yeah. And that's what our friend Neil and Jen, their son Tate, that they're in that scene right now. That's all. And I feel like they are referencing all these old hardcore bands too. It's like collecting the records and doing all that stuff, but then also making the new version of that and seeing their shows and stuff. I'm like, yep, this is like 20 to 30 years ago, like crazy kids jumping off the ceiling and packing into little back rooms and
That's
hundreds
great.
and hundreds of people and loud and people holding drum sets so the drum set doesn't go flying across the stage or the floor or whatever. It's awesome.
I've jumped off too many things to have any negative associations for that. Yeah, you got to jump off things.
It's great. I watch it.
Yeah,
I know. I'm like Neil. Would it be offensive if an old guy like me showed up to just watch? Because this looks super fun, but I don't want to be. I think we talked about this last time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be the old guy. Like, I also don't want to seem creepy. So I don't know. Maybe if I had my camera, then it's okay.
Right. Like, you're like a journalist. Yeah. You get licensed there. No, I think you need to get a bullet belt and then like the big shotgun haircut.
Yeah.
And some studded vest with really tight pants. And some creepers. And then you'd be perfect. You'll totally
shave the beard.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of eyeliner. Put a little bit of eyeliner on there. Just something cool.
Like red eyeliner, a little bit.
Just
underneath the eyes. Yeah, totally.
Oh, it's amazing. So so Red Scare, and then the Panthers thing. I think that's when I met him, and it was so funny. Yeah, just reflecting back on all those times. We did a tour with, I think, Moving Units and Panthers. From maybe Sacramento, San Francisco, somewhere in the middle there, maybe Barstow or something, or Bakersfield, and then. I don't know if we played in LA. I feel like that's the funny part of it. And then like San Diego, I remember that. But yeah, it was one of those things. You're like, okay, this is cool. But it's very, Moving Units was very much the disco band of the time.
Yeah.
It had a lot of, it was the cool thing at the time with, long bangs and disco drum beats.
Yeah. The kind of Gang of Four.
Yeah.
Inspired.
Yeah.
And this was when you were Wives?
Yes, yeah, the demonized band before No Age was called Wives, and we were I think we just wanted to be Black Dice, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I think we were looking to, somewhere along a lightning bolt black dice kind of influence. I never really felt cool enough to have the cool haircut and to play the disco beats, but I knew it was the
Yeah.
thing at the time. So
Yeah.
it was cool. We got to play those shows, but I think it was also, I don't know. It just felt like such a different time. There were just so many different bands or something. It just felt all so kind of mixed up because, Panthers weren't necessarily that way, but they were also very hip too. It just felt like, well, they're from Brooklyn and this is where the land of cool people come from. But I think Kip had a pretty, understandable, sort of take on it all. It was, he got what was going on.
Yeah.
But, I loved his story of when he was working at the record label. Like he sort of, figured out how to do this thing. Yeah, BMG, and then worked with Lyle Preslar from Minor Threat.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, I was thinking about that. I mean, I've thought about a lot about those years of LA because it's very strange that nothing, like that everything was kind of happening in New York. All the big bands started coming out of New York, and that scene with like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and LCD Sound System and Strokes and all of that stuff. And it's weird that there was so much going on in LA at that time, but it kind of stayed under the radar.
The LA stuff.
Does that make sense? Yeah, like there wasn't that like Strokes band or like that massive, but the people that came out of LA were like Steve Aoki, like the DJ,
yes.
the DJ nightclub nightlife scene, Cobra Snake, like yeah, like you mentioned, like Lindsay Lohan parties, like Frankie Chan, like that whole kind of like club. I mean, it was club scene, but it was weird because it was also a bunch of like hardcore and indie kids, and like hip hop was kind of there as well, and it was more of like a nightlife scene that ended up becoming like they became like branding juggernauts. Like really, like I mean, Frankie Chan still does huge, like the nightlife and these club scenes ended up becoming brands in themselves, and they all started to become like I mean, what would you call them? Like creative directors.
Yes.
No joke. Like they became like, oh, we want you to actually start promoting parties to promote a brand or a movie that's coming out. And they started to become these really big people in advertising, which is really interesting, I think, because they all started out as like the club that you would go to that would be open till 4:00 in the morning, and like whatever, and all the cool people would show up and bands would come through and play, but they ended up all becoming creative directors.
I think that's really, and I think that was part of it too. I think that's what really gave LA its bad name, in some sort of ways, in a pure musical sense, that there was, I think that there was the LA of the 80s, right? Sunset Strip sort of thing gave way to then the alternative sort of scene of whatever that was in the 90s, where there's like Weezer and whatever, Beck and these kinds of things, Silver Lake sort of stuff. And I think there was just sort of the haze of that was still, there was, and the zeitgeist had shifted into like, what if we had fun? What if these things weren't all just kind of like bummer, emo bands or something, you know what I mean? I think there was a very self-serious sort of indie rock, Elliott Smith style thing, within the Los Angeles Silver Lake East Side. The hip kids were all kind of bummers at that point. And then I think the New York thing, it's always how it goes, right? It starts really super simple and then gets overly complicated. And I think the New York stuff was, the Yeah and Liars and these kinds of things, like, it's just about the party. Let's go crazy. It's like punk, reinventing punk again. Like, we just need three chords and everybody look, trashy and just have a good time and party. Don't be afraid to have a dance beat. Don't be afraid to shake it, to dance.
Yeah.
and then that sort of reinvigorated this whole thing, or this, the post strokes. I think there was sort of that thing like, well, what if there was cool things happening in New York, and then
Yeah.
and then the tension focused there, and then like you say, I think the LA sort of thing was like, oh yeah, okay, it was that permission to party sort of thing, and
Yeah.
and I think it's been documented by smarter people than me, or more informed people, but the I think it was All Eyes on New York post 9/11, and then in that kind of like party at the end of the world kind of vibe, the party in the apocalypse sort of thing, I think is what Brooklyn in those early years was sort of was. We're like, well, if they're flying planes into buildings, we're gonna stay up all night being fucked up, and let's see what we're young, but there's no future. We're at war again. This is we were too young to party in the 80s. We were kids in the 80s, so now this is going to be our new coked out 80s party. We're not going to be serious. We're not going to be sad. We're not really going to learn how to play these instruments. We're just going to kind of have fun and go wild. And then LA sort of responded with Steve Aoki, like, we could party? Great. Let's can we sell Levi's and digital cameras while we're at it? Can we I got this new product, can we advertise this? Can we make money off of this thing? And I was just like, oh, LA, come on, man. Don't be the bummer at the party.
Oh, it was pretty fun. I mean,
that's true.
I mean, I do think that is the thing about LA, is that it never tends to take itself too seriously. Even the serious stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, even when you get like the serious thing, like serious rap and music and whatever, still people come in and they're like, yeah, I don't know, we still also want to go to the fun parties and hang out. Like, I do think that's the interesting thing about what I noticed about LA, or being in LA for so many years, is that I almost never saw fights, like at bars.
Yeah.
And I never, there was just like every other city you go to, it's like, there's always a fight outside at 2, or there was always something. And in LA, it was like, there's never fights, because people are like, I don't know, I'm kind of here to like meet people, or I'm trying to schmooze a little bit. I'm trying to get work. I'm trying to get into a scene. I'm trying, like, there was always this thing of like, as not always. And obviously I'm only going to certain parties, and I'm not going to certain other parties and areas and whatever. But that even people, like, there is this sense of LA of in that time frame that was like positive. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, no, I mean, even going to you could go to the craziest bar and the biggest party, but you also might stop by the Smell to see a show on the way. And you also might stop by another place to go see some friends. There was so much going on, and I think that there was a pretty positive vibe of like good bands happening. And I mean, we could always get shows. We had no like, we weren't trying to do anything with our band. Like we weren't bringing a lot of people in or anything, but we could always like jump on shows or open up for people and
yeah.
Like, and I think there was that sense of like, I don't know, man, let's see what happens. There's got to be something happening, or like you said, there was always something. There was always someone starting a new little venue, or we started our gallery. We had a gallery for a couple of years, and it was very supported by people, and there was just a lot of like energy of I mean, we also, that was at the time where we tried to get a coffee shop next door, and someone for the gallery in Highland Park, and people don't drink coffee in Highland Park. I mean, come on. So it was definitely a different time.
Little did they know.
Yeah.
Nobody drinks coffee. What are you trying to do? It's crazy. Yeah. No, I think, looking back on it in hindsight, I think it becomes clearer some of the mechanics that were going on. But I think at the time it was just like, everywhere's like this. This is going to last forever. It's always this way. Yeah. You would just the first through the door, like, oh, this is what it is. Okay, cool. But I think it was, I think there was something about Los Angeles in the sense that it's because there's an industry of entertainment, of advertising, of sort of the commerce sort of town, that it's this working town sort of place that, there needs to be spaces for things to happen. You know what I mean? In that venue kind of way, or bar sort of way. Like people are always trying to promote something or do something, but maybe it's almost like that. It's like it's created for one thing. This is pre pop up. The idea, there was the pop up now, sort of like fine tuned this a little bit. Like, we don't need to pay rent for a whole year. We just need rent for like 2 months while we launch our campaign. But it almost had this feeling of like, oh, if somebody has a bar that has good relationships with all of these advertisers or entertainment industry things, then that's what is going to keep it afloat, 80% of the time. And then you have another 20% you could fill with just crappy local bands. I'm thinking like the three of clubs, or, these types of places, that were like, cool places, but in general, there were party places. There were, places where, people would want to throw sponsored content, type of parties. And this is all pre-social media too, which I think has changed it, where it sort of felt like this place is around and it gets a lot of work, but you also need to fill the Wednesdays and the Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And
totally.
so that's where it gave opportunities to local bands to sort of have a place to play, to try something, set up a show, do something, because they needed something to happen there.
Well, and speaking of Three of Clubs, that's where Steve Aoki started DJing.
Of course.
I was there. Yeah. And it's funny. I literally, like, I was supposed to shoot photos of him, and I had met him a couple times at that point, but I was supposed to shoot photos of him for, I don't know, some magazine and it was about Dim-Mak.
Mm-hmm.
And the night before, he's like, "Oh, I'm DJing," and I think it was with Luis Farfan.
Yeah, it sounds right.
Who used to also DJ there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like learning how to DJ. But that was at Three of Clubs, and that was also the first time, like, that was the first place like the Bronx ever played, and but then we also played there with, who knows, I had Quee probably, and
sure,
Brother Reed, and 400 Blows, and all of those bands that in that little tiny, that no stage, little carpet, you play on the stairs.
That's great. And wasn't awesome. Was Diva's dad part of the owners, or somebody from Love and Rockets and Bauhaus? Was that
I don't know.
Was that the story on who owned it?
I don't know.
For some reason, I feel like that was maybe had something to do with it. Maybe an investor or something. But
yeah.
But like that's it though, right? It's like somebody from a band, somewhere is trying to make money. They open a bar. This is sort of what the Gold Diggers is now. That's people from bands and things. And
and was it Blacks?
Right. Yeah. Bethany's band. Yeah. Or Bethany's bar. Yeah. So, it felt like there was always something popping up, and we didn't know it at the time, but the local bands would be able to get the slow days, and that sort of could sustain a scene, or create a scene, or create something to do, it wasn't, and there was a sense that, like, you didn't really have to make money. You just had to do something on a Tuesday. You had to have a reason to open the door. So we'll get these bands in there. If each band brings in two of their friends, and somebody buys a beer somewhere, like, it's probably enough.
Yeah,
but again,
or maybe person spends $20.
Yeah, or maybe it wasn't, because the place all went out of business. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's also the thing. Like, everybody was willing to try something, and I think ultimately what benefited the most was the bands at the time, because they all had a place to play and something to do, and
it was great.
Could create something. Yeah.
I mean, and we didn't. I mean, I was trying to be a photographer, and Chris worked IT, and Dave was a drummer he was Herman's Hermits drummer.
Oh,
tour drummer.
That was his day?
Yeah, that's his day job. Wow. So every day we'd play, and then, like, he'd be flying to Canada or a casino or whatever.
Daughter.
Yeah, he had the best gig ever, because then he also got frequent flyer miles. He had 1 million frequent flyer miles. So then I think you guys talked about this too. It's like that being in a band, like, if you didn't have to make money, then it didn't matter. Like, we were just like, I don't know, we're just playing to play, and we ended up making some records and stuff, but it was all kind of lucky.
Yeah, well, that was all part of it. You know what I mean?
But we also just didn't have to. We didn't have to try to. We weren't trying to make money for it. We weren't. So we kind of got to do whatever.
Well, it was low stakes, because like we established at the beginning of the conversation, the rent was cheap, the cars were cheap, in a
Totally.
round. You know what I mean? There was enough. The stakes were low enough, and it wasn't like you had to have 1 million followers and a global following and a thing. Like the stakes were
Yeah.
low enough. If you made a couple bucks, you could sustain yourself, and then just go out and experiment and try different things. Like, so I'm going to be a DJ. I'm going to be a photographer. I'm going to start a band.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a movie. I'm going to do
Yeah.
a thing, and just these kind of fast and loose with creative ideas. And you had to put the work behind it. You had to put something. You had to have a practice space or something. You know what I mean? There was a little bit of
Yeah.
you had to ante up to something, but it felt like even beyond inflation, the stakes, were still fairly low, and there was opportunities and things you do to go and try things. And it was in a real localized type of way. You know what I mean? Where it was like, okay, well, I don't know. I tried. We had a band and we put out a 7-inch and, we sold 10 of them. And now we have 390 or whatever, 290 left in a cardboard box.
Yeah. I still have 20 records sitting on my shelf right now.
Yeah. But it wasn't, but you didn't lose. You didn't fail at it. That was all part of, that was the success. That was, you
and there were enough,
you played at KXLU, you played at a club, you met some famous people or whatever. That was fun.
Yeah. And there were enough places to play and there were enough places to have art shows, and there were enough places to do all those things. And there were enough people that had the energy to run those places. I mean, and again, young energy, 20 people, everyone in their 20s. And so you have all those places that you could do these things for as a project and I feel like we were successful, and we didn't make $1. We probably made a total of $1,000, and it all went to Dave because he had a practice space. So every dollar that we ever made, it was like, we get paid $50. Like, just give it to Dave. Give it to Dave. Give everything to Dave because he has his practice space.
Your thing, he's paying for it monthly out of pocket.
And he had his 3 other bands, and they were all playing. It's like, just give it to him. Yeah. But we got to go to Australia because we played with enough bands, and our friends put out like our friend James put out a little 7-inch, and we were on one side, and they were like, if you can get here, we'll put you can come on tour with us. And Dave had all his frequent flyer miles. And it cost us nothing to go there. Like, I got a couple jobs while I was there, so I paid for it that way. And I mean, it was just like, I don't know, these weird, having those spaces and those people that are supportive of the arts in a town are so integral to, like, just that support of someone that's willing to put space and time into allowing people to come in and be weirdos and like put their heart on their sleeve and go crazy, is like, brings so much energy to, like, a city, or even just a small community, and then all these kids kind of come out of the corners and go, oh, I have a thing. I've been working on a hardcore opera. I don't know if anyone wants to listen to it. And it was like, turns out there's a lot of people who want to listen to it. Fucking go for it, man. Or like, I've got a dance thing that I've been working on in my bedroom for 4 years. And turns out there's 7 other people who have dance things, and nobody knew about it because there was never a space for it,
Yeah. No, it's incredible. It's that kind of community space sort of feeling, and, like our field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. If you have a thing going, and relative low expectations, you know what I mean? If whatever your definition of success is low enough, it's pretty easy to be successful. It's a self-defined problem or a self-defined solution. I think that's 100%. what's weird now. Maybe I'm out of touch with it. Maybe I'm misrepresenting it, but you can, a young band could record a record, put it out on all the streamers on YouTube everywhere, and get, 50 views or 50 plays.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably the same as selling 10 7-inches. You know what I mean? But there was something about, well, I still have this thing, but I don't know, maybe it costs more money. So the fact it's even lower, like, bar of entry, but expectations are so much higher. And it's that feeling like, oh, well, I failed. I put this thing up and nobody listened to it. Whereas like, I think when we put stuff out and nobody listened to it, it was like, they weren't supposed to listen to it. We're a small bit. We knew we didn't have access to a big stage, but it was like part of the building block of getting better as a band and getting more visibility was to kind of put out some sucky things in the beginning and almost hope no one hears it, because it's not your best thing, but it's the gauntlet you run through. but
You
maybe
got to
it'll
get
help
it
you
out
get a
there.
show. It'll help you like, oh, you look more like a legitimate band when you go on tour or when you try to go to another town. You're like, oh, I got a 7-inch to sell. It was sort of that like
Yeah.
stamp of like, oh, these guys are really doing something here. They have a 7-inch.
Yeah. Or
So,
even like having a burned, even just having a burned CD
oh
to
yeah,
give to the
then you're
to the
really fancy.
bookers or
Yeah,
whatever, and you're
yeah.
like,
Whoa,
yeah.
these
Although
guys have
you, it's
sleeves.
funny you talked about everybody having a job in the band. Like that was, I'm kind of the same as you. I don't think I ever booked a show. I was
Oh
always
god,
like, no one wants to hear us, man. I can't,
the
I
worst
can't
salesman.
go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm like,
it's
I
like
can't go ask him at like Spaceland if we can play. And Chris was always like, oh, I just booked a show there. You guys want to play on Thursday? I'm like, I'm glad you're here.
yes.
Every single show we ever played was because of Chris.
Oh my god, yeah.
But I would get the calls. Someone would be like, hey, do you want to play in the middle of Mexico for this event that these kids are protesting a dump going in or whatever? And I'd be like,
Yeah.
yes,
Let's go.
1,000%. And then be like, you guys, we can't do this. No, this isn't, we can't, how are we? Yeah, I don't know. It's
Oh,
very
I know.
funny.
Well, it's funny. Yeah. So the one show I ever booked really for No Age was a basement on the 4th of July, the basement of an art gallery in like Pico Union, and on the 4th of July, and it was Kip's solo or Kip's like art band after Panther's Cloudland Canyons. And he had Rob Lowe from not the
Mm-hmm.
actor Rob Lowe, but the musician from 90 Day Men and many other bands, and now he is
Yeah.
he's a well-known composer. He did the Candyman remake soundtrack, and
Yeah, he's great.
does very well. But anyway, he was playing Cloudland Canyon, also playing a solo set, and then High Places, who are our friends from New York, were out here tour. So anyway, it was like, hey, we should set up a show, and then like I found a place, and I did the thing. Like I couldn't believe it. Like, wow, this was a huge success. And I think we had a barbecue out on the like sidewalk after. Like I just treated it like it was a party. I was like, oh yeah, it's a 4th of July party. Come hang out. And there was enough people on the sidewalk in the parking lot outside, just drinking beers from a cooler, like and partying. And then there was a show kind of happening in the basement. So I kind of treated it like that, and I was like, oh, this is great. Like I don't know if anybody made any money, but it was a fun 4th of July party with a bunch of bands downtown.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
the way I looked at it. It's like, but I was also like, I can't do this every week or every month. Like that was
no,
that was my one
so
big
much work.
thing. That was my party. Like I knew how to throw a birthday party. I knew how to throw some kind of one time event sort of thing.
Yeah,
but to make
and that's
hard.
That's what it was all about. I mean, for me too, it's like it's all of those things. Like music for me, in many ways, completely like changed the trajectory of my life in the sense of I was in like a little band in college, but then even then meeting all of the people that were in bands or roommates that were in bands or whatever, and seeing that energy, and then that's when I started taking photos, and then that brought me to meeting Travis Keller, who then moved to LA, started Buddyhead way back then, and coming here and then being a music photographer, being in bands, and then all the people that I know now are from some sort of touch from music, and I think that energy of the kind of creating music and feeling like you need to play it for people to bring people together, even if they're just like, yeah, that sucked. Or like, oh my God, way too loud, I got to get out of here. Or, oh, this was great or whatever, but bringing people together. And then really it's like took me all over the world. Like I shot photos of bands playing a show in Kuwait once for a weekend, and it's like, or like we got to go to Australia and tour with our friends, and the whole thing was paid for by the measly amount of money or by the fact that they were able to promote us as an American band and get money for the whole tour. It's just like those little things of like those weird little ways of like, no, come over here. You can play shows in bars, and that's going to somehow pay for the fact, even though no one knows who you are, you don't have anything to sell, but somehow that's going to pay for this whole thing. And then even going like our friend Marco, booked us to play his friend's grandma's backyard in Mexicali in like June or something. And it was 105 degrees at night. We played at midnight, in the backyard of this kid's house, and then we played at his art gallery as well in Mexico. I mean, it's just like all these like, what, that happened?
Yep.
It's crazy, but it is that energy, I think, that of the live music energy that somehow always, I mean, it's probably like the oldest art form, right? Music, some kind of like
Sure.
drumming, making instruments, bringing people together, getting people all kind of in a rhythm in one room, and feeling like you belong somewhere for like an hour.
Yeah.
Is
That's it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. I think keeping it simple and sort of the most basic form, it always just makes sense. It's just easy and it's fun. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. This was fun. This was good.
Yeah.
I like, yeah, I know it's fun. It just feels like, it just keeps going and going. It's fun to kind of look back. I think that was a big thing for me, just talking with Kip and kind of like, right, yes, this time I remember this. This was sort of the nascent sort of thing before I could even dream up of anything else that would ever happen for the rest of my life. It was sort of just like, wow, look at us here. We're just having beers in a parking lot. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
And then to fast forward all these years and like, holy shit, that's right. Like, you can't, it's like, you have to imagine, like, somebody you met and talked to briefly, 20 years ago, you'd come back and like, hey, what's going on? Like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. What the fuck? What's going on? Like, what have you been up to?
You're a dad? I'm a dad.
That's how that conversation felt. I think I had also recorded another podcast that morning before too, so I was all kinds of punchy and just letting stuff fly.
You're ready.
I was going like, wow, who cares? Awesome. All right. Well, we will be back on Thursday with another fun episode. I think this one is going to be Bothering the Band. This is this is the first podcast I was ever on. They asked me to come on and be a guest, and they have an exciting 200th episode that is dropping this Thursday. So I interview them about how they started their podcast, and it's funny that I remember, when we were doing the interview, they were very uptight about not saying anything political, because I think they live in Florida or somewhere in the South. We get into it. And but not that they have right wing leanings. I think they're both pretty lefty, but it was interesting to sort of see how, like, well, we don't really talk about that here. I'm like, well, fuck it. You're on my podcast. Let's talk about it. What's going on? I'll say the most basic,
push them a little bit,
basic lefty liberal bullshit. Yeah. Like, what the fuck? Is that too far? I don't know. How far is too far? I mean, we could really, should we start defunding the police? What do you want? What are we doing? Like, whoa,
where are we going?
Where are we going? Wait a second. I have to live in the South, guys. I can't really be talking about these things. So that's fun. But they have a big guest coming up on their Thursday episode. So that'll be, so that's, we talked a little bit too. Like, well, we got, I have a few, not to pull the curtain back too far, but we have a couple interviews in the hopper. And so I'm lucky enough that some of these people want certain dates, like, can mine come out around here because it's going to line up with this thing or that thing? I'm always like, yes, of course. Always try to accommodate that because
that's cool.
It makes sense. But there's some fun ones coming up. I can tell you that much. So
I've heard one of them.
We've been sitting on that one, but that's the thing too. Is
that's a good one.
I get to abuse my friends, anybody that I know well enough that I'm just going to sit on their episode for months until I can find the right place for it.
Yeah,
and I know they won't care. They will still be friends afterwards.
Yes, we will still be friends.
Yeah. All right, everybody, have a good week. I hope summer's going well. Remember to always reapply sunscreen after coming out of any body of water, after the pool, after the lake, after the beach. Just go and throw another layer on there. Why not? Big hats are always good ideas.
Yeah, wear a helmet.
And wear a helmet. Yeah, if you're going into a pool, wear a helmet.
At all times.
If you're going into anywhere, things that get really slippery around the deck of a pool, around those areas, anywhere where you could possibly slip, good. Just throw a helmet on. Why not? Yeah. It couldn't hurt.
Yeah, they look great.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. It's the new fashion accessory for this summer is a large full-faced helmet at all times.
Yes.
All right,
we can end it there.
Yes.